It's great to meet you. The first question is, what exactly do you do with CAIR?
Well, since 9/11 in my practice, I've been doing, in conjunction with CAIR and Muslim advocates and some other organizations across the country, we have been conducting a pro bono lawyer program for individuals who have been targeted by the FBI for little reason other than just being Muslims.
Sure.
There is a kind of a vast profiling that's been going on in the Muslim community really since 9/11, and most of that is not justified. These individuals are not suspects of any criminal activity, just someone's put them on a list. And so really right after, I think it was about a couple of years after 9/11, we started hearing from a lot of the leadership in the community that attendance at the masjids around Houston and all over the country was dwindling.
Sure.
People were paranoid to go and pray because they were afraid that the brother next to them or the sister was someone who was working for the government. There was this real climate of paranoia that everyone was a snitch, and so part of that we felt was because of this, what they called at the time a voluntary interview program.
Okay.
And that's what the FBI called it. They would approach people, tell them that they were conducting these voluntary interviews, and for some reason they ended up on this list. And inevitably, as part of this interview process, they would ask who else goes, which masjid you go to, who else goes there, if there's anyone who's outspoken there, anyone in leadership, then all those people would get interviewed.
Sure.
And
Which
so
is all supposed to be protected by the First Amendment.
Yes, it's also supposed to be protected. In fact, the DOJ set up guidelines prior to conducting these interviews that expressly prohibited this type of targeting, right? But they do it anyways. And so we kept getting reports of people who were being interviewed. They would ask prohibited questions. Just they're not supposed to ask, "Are you Shia or Sunni?" I mean, that is a protected, constitutionally protected area, and so it has nothing to do with law enforcement, right? But just questions like that. They would ask how people feel about particular hadith or whatever, and so it was just not only was it constitutionally offensive, but it really did violate people's First Amendment rights, their rights to express their religious beliefs, their right to assemble and gather. And so we've been conducting this program really ever since.
Okay.
I personally have represented for free hundreds of Muslims in the community in Houston, and it's really become kind of my calling outside of the day job because what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And so, it can be, it's something we had a physician, an older lady come into the office who forgot her handbag at a grocery store, right? It gets an FBI interview these days because she's Muslim,
okay.
right?
No, okay.
We've had guys who walked into a building, an office building, to go to the restroom, get an interview.
Okay.
So it's really, what you see is a community of non-Muslims. Maybe it's innocent or it's just been ginned up by the government, but they're very nervous
Sure.
of what they see as someone who's different, and so they're filing these suspicious persons reports with the FBI, and it's really got out of hand.
Yeah.
And so that's our commitment, and we're sticking to it.
Got it. So another question is, what's your advice for the leadership of the Muslim community? To what extent should they not be speaking to law enforcement, the FBI? What kind of relationships? What kind of engagement?
It's a very, very delicate balance. Personally, and I know that CAIR has taken the same position officially, is we do not encourage anyone to meet with law enforcement, especially during these voluntary interviews, without a lawyer being present. And that's simply because people who are unrepresented during these interviews tend to be harassed. They tend to be asked constitutionally protected questions. We've had elderly people come in who have met with FBI agents without counsel, who have spent 6 hours, with an FBI agent just being really harassed. Yeah, just being interrogated. We go around to the different masjids in town and give these kind of know your rights presentations so that people understand that they have a right to choose whether to be interviewed or not. Just because the FBI comes to the door doesn't mean you have to talk to them, right? And in fact, we advise everyone not to talk to them.
How about give them some tea and cookies?
Let
them in for some chai?
No. So that is one of our community has a very giving streak and is very accommodating to people when they come to the door. And that is one of the big mistakes, is to let these guys into the house, because once they get in, it's very difficult to get rid of them politely, right? Because they know what they're doing. They know the cultural nuances. They know once they get in the door, if they can get some tea and some biscuits, they're good. They're going to be there for a while, right? So yeah, we encourage everyone to, and look, it's not that the Muslim community has anything to hide or that they've done anything wrong. These are the same rights that are known and exercised by every other community. And so you don't see them going up to, all the Catholics in town, interviewing them, or any other religious group. And so it's really just a matter of knowing your rights so you can assert your rights intelligently. And if you choose to meet with the FBI, you do it with a lawyer. It keeps things professional. A meeting which might have taken 6 hours now only takes 30 minutes, right? And then they can ask pointed questions, make their whatever assessment they need to make, and get them out the door.
Actually, I tell my friends, because you're innocent, you shouldn't be talking to the FBI. People think, we're innocent, we have nothing to that.
Yeah. It is backwards. It's human nature. The FBI is trained. That's my day job as a criminal defense lawyer, and so over the years we've been exposed to a lot of training methods of FBI and law enforcement, and they know how to interview people. So they will approach an individual the way they think is necessary to get that interview. So they may be aggressive, they may be polite.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, they may make you feel like you're guilty if you don't talk to them, right? Because of this human nature. It's human nature to say, well, I've got nothing to hide, I'll talk. And that's really the wrong position to take. I mean, this is America. We have these rights, and one of the rights is to be left alone, especially when it's all based on this profiling.
I got it. I have to ask, how accurate is the media and the entertainment industry's portrayal of FBI and so on, right? Like, I've never met an FBI agent in my life, but we watched tons of movies.
Right.
How accurate is that?
Right. Well, FBI agents and police officers are just like everyone else.
Okay.
I've met some great people working in law enforcement. There are FBI agents that are concerned about upholding the law and believe in the constitutional protections that are in there. There's also ones that are very aggressive, and for whatever their background, they bring something different to the table. And so you really see them all over the place. They're just like anyone else. There's good, there's bad, there's in between.
The ugly.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that.
Right. Muslim immigrants to the U.S., right? Someone who's been here for a few months, maybe a couple of years, from the Middle East, for example. Let's say one of those countries that are always on the microscope and so on. What advice do you have for them?
It's a difficult time. There's no reason in minimizing that. From our president, which is hard sometimes to say, but from the president down, the verbiage and the language that's been used to describe Muslims, especially new arrivals, has been very hostile. And so I think new arrivals have to be, first of all, they need to know their rights. I mean, everyone inside the country has rights, whether you're here as a permanent resident or as a citizen, or even someone who's visiting. Once you're inside the country, you have certain rights. And so it's important to know those rights so that you can exercise them and be proud of them. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. But on a side note, what I always encourage, especially the younger Muslim people that are being interviewed, a lot of times they have more passion and are offended about being contacted by law enforcement. And so as part of the process, I always encourage them to put their best foot forward. because there's a lot of law enforcement investigators that don't know Muslims. They don't know the Muslim community. And I've found that, over meeting with people from the community who are just like their kids, and who are respectful and intelligent, that it kind of changes the way law enforcement approaches the next person they're going to interview. So I encourage everyone to be respectful, but be firm, and so you can say, look, I've done nothing wrong. I'm glad to cooperate, but I'm not going to do so without having a lawyer here. I know my rights, and I'm going to exercise those rights just like everyone else in this country. And I'm not going to shy away from it just because I'm a Muslim.
Sure. All right. It's kind of shifting gears, but is it accurate to say that you have political aspirations? Do you have any political aspirations?
Well, I ran for Texas House of Representatives during the last election cycle. I had never had any political aspirations before that. It is a difficult row to hoe. In addition to all your other activities, your work and family and balancing all that, it's very difficult. The reason I got into the politics is because quite frankly I found that the individual I was running against was a very right-wing conservative who had engaged in my opinion, a lot of speech and rhetoric that was hateful. He was one of the co-sponsors of what they call the anti-Sharia legislation. And as far as my professional life, he also had proposed a lot of legislation or supported legislation which I felt was bad for the criminal justice system.
All right.
And so I really had a two-pronged interest in him, and as we started developing that, we realized that it wasn't just limited to the Muslims. I mean, he was part of that wing of the party that is also hostile to a lot of groups.
Okay.
And so
they're xenophobic and they're...
Yeah, they're xenophobic and they have positions which appear to have racial issues. The whole demonizing the gay population and some of the children that are in our schools that have sexual orientations that we may not understand, but nonetheless are genuinely held. It's my opinion that in America everyone sits at the table, right? Whether we agree with them or not, whether we share their values or not, everyone gets a free opportunity here, and the government should not get in the way of that. And so I don't know what my future holds. We've not made any decisions about any upcoming elections. My son has been, after my election, he made a commitment to run for the local school board, and he was elected to the Pearland Independent School District as a trustee, 18 years old.
High school?
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
So he is kind of doing that right now, and we're supporting him. Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I guess a final question would be, so this organization is about Muslim youth, right? And it's about educating them, building confidence.
Right.
So I'll keep it open-ended, but what's your advice to the young Muslim Americans?
My advice is to not shy away from Islam or from your Muslim culture. Again, I've said several times during this interview, I mean, that's what makes America great, right? I've talked to many scholars who know a lot more than I do, who have said in some ways America is the greatest country to be a Muslim in because we're free to practice as we wish.
Maybe Canada.
Yeah, maybe Canada.
Maybe.
There's a lot of places where you can exercise your religion. It's just the environment from what I believe is a minority of haters has really kind of set things in a very tense setting right now, and I think we're going to get past that. I think right now is our time to fight against this oppression and this bigotry, and we'll get through it, and we'll be better for it. So I encourage everyone to stick with it, to be proud of who they are, to not hide, and just demand your rights, do it in a way that's professional and responsible. We've seen other groups who have been profiled in the history of America, who have been discriminated against, and they've all come out better on the other end. And I think that's what Muslims are going to to show that they can do the same.
Awesome. I guess that leaves us at, do you need a legal assistant? Are you hiring?
Not yet. But we rotate paralegals through. So
sounds good. Maybe next summer.
Yeah,
Back after my first year in law school.
Yeah, it'd be good.
So Floyd, thank you so much.
Yeah, my
This was
pleasure.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.